So in the first part of this talk on Anthony Albanese's press conference yesterday, we've established that they're going to use ISIS ISIS is the primary scapegoat for the negligence of the Australian government and the inspiration of the pro-Palestinian protests. Let's carry on.
Hate preaching, advocating violence against protected groups, increasing penalties for existing offences for hate speech, advocating violence or property destruction against protected groups, making hate motivation a factor in sentencing for Commonwealth crimes with options to limit this to online threat, and harassment crimes as announced to expand to all Commonwealth crimes if required. We want to list prohibited hate organisations to make it a criminal offence to join, recruit or support an organisation listed by the Home Affairs Minister and the Attorney General. Racial vilification and promoting racial supremacy offence. So we're considering drafting options there. We want the power to cancel visas where the Home Affairs Minister suspects a person has engaged in vilification, hate speech, promoting violence, displaying hate symbols or associating with a terrorist organisation or prohibited hate group.
Well, that's put him in a real tough situation, and this is why he doesn't want to have a royal commission. Tony Burke was bringing in the ISIS brides completely covertly.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, recent media reports state that your government had no involvement in bringing back the ISIS-affiliated group. My community in Fowler, home to large Assyrian, Chaldean and Mandaean and Hasidic communities who were all persecuted and subjected to genocide by the ISIS regime, is rightly terrified. Will your government give my community in Fowler an absolute guarantee that none of the returned ISIS-affiliated women and children will be settled in our community?
Call to the Leader of the House. Order, members on my left. Leader of the House has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the member for Fowler for raising the issue in the House. Those opposite have given the impression in the media they were going to, but once they get in here appear for some reason unwilling to raise the issue. If I start with this principle,
Order.
First of all, as the Prime Minister's made clear, there has been no repatriation. So when the question at the end of that for the member for Fowler refers to the government settling people, the government is not settling people. The government is not involved in settling people. What we have is a situation where we have a number of Australian citizens who made a terrible decision, an absolutely dreadful decision, to go off and join others who were involved in what has been described as one of the most horrific organisations that the world has seen.
So we've got the women that go and support their husbands and the other fighters in Middle Eastern conflicts, terrorism. Again, the Middle Eastern enmity, the Muslims fighting against each other and everyone else. The Arabs, right, not necessarily Muslims, but the Shiites and all the others fighting with each other. The ISIS brides go over there, support them, have sex with them, look after them, cook for them, feed them, bandage their wounds, possibly bury them, right, all this. And this is going to put Anthony Albanese into trouble because Tony Burke facilitated them coming back against Australian will, and he did it all undercover.
And this is not the first time that Australian citizens who made that decision have returned.
The last time should have been that. Why are they allowing this? See, it's terrible.
Australian citizens seek to return to Australia. They are able to do so.
Now, this is where he's trying to blindside everybody. If somebody leaves Australia to go fight in terrorism, battle or go to a terrorism cause, the laws are there for them not to be allowed to come back. I'm going to stop this fool here because this guy is one of the most corrupt politicians I've ever seen or heard.
Thanks, Prime Minister. All Australians stand together, horrified and disgusted by the terrorist actions and crimes that occurred just over a week ago. Every Australian is affected, but no Australians more deeply than the Jewish community of Australia and those who were directly and personally impacted at Bondi. The crime and the bigotry behind the crime was rooted deeply in anti-Semitism. The method that was used was made available because someone in suburban Sydney with no possible practical need had 6 high-powered firearms.
Okay, so this guy's a very dangerous man. I have to say this. Anybody with some common sense realises that. He will not risk his electorate by saying that it was a Middle Eastern religiously inspired problem, because that'll connect it to the Muslims and the Muslims will get upset and he's going to lose votes. He's a very dangerous man. He is definitely a corrupt politician. He's proven that. He might not like that, but he's proven it, and he's proving it here again. He must think we're stupid. I said to my partner last night and some other people, this man must think the Australian people are stupid. And it come to me last night that he's the one that's stupid, because he's doing this in front of the whole of Australia and the world, and it's all filmed.
We need to be able to deal with the motivation and the method. And today, there are a number of the areas that have been announced by the Prime Minister that fall directly to me. On the issue of the power to cancel visas, at the moment when I'm cancelling visas and refusing visas, and I've been doing this actively since I came in.
But I wouldn't say he's been doing it correctly, because he's given out visas as well to people that shouldn't have them.
I always have to work it out from the perspective of, does it incite discord in the community? Establishing that somebody has engaged in hate and vilification on its own is not enough. Now it will be.
Well, it was enough, and the laws were there, but he just didn't want to play that game. He wasn't going to. This man went to the airport and was welcoming Middle Eastern people in of a night.
Documents have revealed Tony Burke told a secret meeting that there would be no blockages to the return of ISIS brides to Australia. The Home Affairs Minister reportedly wanted the entire matter kept out of the media spotlight. The document seen by The Australian also reveals a secret meeting between the Minister and the charity organisation responsible for bringing the ISIS brides home. He's also reported to have asked Home Affairs officials to leave the room for that conversation. The Revolutions contradict Mr Burke's and the Prime Minister's claims that they knew nothing about the matter and had no role in it.
Now, if you want to see how corrupt the government is, you've got to get into these Senate estimates and these Senate meetings.
Chair, just a few moments ago, the Minister drew a distinction between this returning cohort and previous returning cohorts by saying some of those previous people were ISIS fighters and these ones were not ISIS fighters. So can you confirm for me that there is no evidence or suspicion that these people were involved in any acts of terror or other terror offences while they were overseas?
This is hilarious.
Senator, that is an operational matter that would have to be referred to security, law enforcement agencies, but I can say not to our knowledge.
Right, well, so the Minister was able to. So there's no suspicion that either of the adults in this cohort committed any terrorism offence while they're overseas.
Senator,
I just want to say, can you see how corrupt and pathetic this is? She's just making sure nobody gets in trouble for what's actually happened.
I'm very conscious that I don't know all of the information that might be available to security and intelligence and law enforcement agencies, nor whether or not any future investigation or prosecution might take place, and therefore I think it would be not appropriate for me to speculate about that. Those questions could go to them and they could make a judgment about whether or not
And
it
they
was
will, but
appropriate
you
to
just said in
answer.
your previous answer you don't believe so. So just to be clear, they did not commit any declared area offence by being in a declared area while they're overseas?
So, Senator, what I said was not to my knowledge.
Yes.
But those questions are best addressed to the security, law enforcement, intelligence agencies.
What about associating with the terrorist organisation? Are we seriously saying that ISIS brides were not associated with the terrorist organisation, which is a crime under the criminal code?
So, Senator, I've said that I don't wish to do anything that would prejudice any future investigation.
Sure, but the Minister just told us these people were not ISIS fighters. They're different from previous cohorts.
No, what I said, what I did was read out to you a question on notice that was answered relating to the 40 returnees from the conflict in Syria and Iraq between 2013 and 2017 under the coalition government, and the answer to that question in notice said that that 40 included some who have fought for ISIL, some have not fought but provided support to ISIL, and a few who had joined other Islamic extremist groups.
And then you went on to say, and this group were not ISIS fighters. So
I think
what
I'm
information
not sure I said
did
that.
Minister?
Feel free to have
Well, I
a
haven't
look
finished
at
my
the
question.
transcript.
I haven't finished my question, Minister. What information do you have to satisfy yourself that neither of these adults who've returned have committed any terrorism offences and were not ISIS fighters?
Well, as Ms Foster has said, I think they are questions that should be directed to the security agencies who are in a better position to understand what should and should not be put in the public domain.
But you just told us moments ago these people were not ISIS fighters. How did you know that?
Well, no, feel free to go back and have a look at the transcript. I'm pretty sure that's not what I said.
Well, I'm pretty sure it is what you said, and we'll get
Feel
that
free.
transcript
Feel
and I'll
free.
provide it to you. I'll quote it back to you directly.
So what you're seeing here is Albanese's government being exposed. Okay? You make up your own mind. But if you watch these Senate hearings and the Senate estimates and all the rest of it, it just goes on and on and on and on, the corruption of the Albanese government. It's terrible.
Without the government even being able to defend its own migration program and its loss of control of the borders, and the fact that they are facilitating the return of ISIS brides with no information for the public about where they are, where these ISIS brides are being housed, whether they will be charged with any crimes. There is literally no information from the Albanese government about immigration.
This looks and feels like the government wanted to completely cover this up. Their language has been quite tricky as well about this. I think Australians should have real concerns about who these people are, where they are, and some of the statements they've made or what are their beliefs. Again, the most important thing you can do as a government is to keep your people safe.
So we can see Tony Burke's not a very integral man.
The Minister for Home Affairs, Tony Burke, must stand up today to answer questions from the media and for the Australian public about what the Albanese government knew, when they knew it, and what they did about the fact that up to 6 so-called ISIS brides and their children have returned to Australia. Either the Albanese government knew and failed to tell the Australian people, which shows contempt for the public, or they didn't know, and people who are associated with one of the most reprehensible terrorist organisations in history have returned to Australia without their knowledge. The Albanese government also needs to answer why it didn't use powers like temporary exclusion orders to prevent these people from returning. They need to explain where they are, where they will live, how they'll be monitored, and whether any of them can be charged under Australia's counter-terrorism framework. The Australian people deserve answers, and going into hiding and running for cover is not good enough.
Cancel visas. At the moment, when I'm cancelling visas and refusing visas, and I've been doing this actively since I came in, I always have to work it out from the perspective of does it incite discord in the community.
So he's trying to save his own ass here, but it's obvious it's all filmed. He's He's even been caught meeting people at the airport. Did you know that? Letting the Middle Easterns in at the airport. He goes down and meets them of a night. Weirdo. I mean, he must be desperate for boats. There he is there in the background.
This is footage of Palestinian refugees being greeted by Tony Burke as they arrive in Australia. The video shows the Home Affairs
He's licking their asses. He doesn't even know who they are.
Minister welcoming dozens of Palestinian arrivals at Sydney Airport.
I bet they're glad to be here. But fair go, honestly.
Crowds can be seen celebrating and playing drums and music, with the minister shaking hands with people coming off the plane. But some critics have called Burke's appearance overkill, pointing out there was no public statement or media announcement to go with it.
I think Tony Burke needs to stick to his day job rather than swanning around out there with refugees, particularly when we don't even know the circumstances under which they've arrived.
That senator's comments triggered a sharp response from Burke, who claimed she was factually wrong and argued this was just another case of the Liberals targeting racial minorities in Australia. It comes after Australia formally recognised Palestine as a sovereign state at the UN General Assembly in the United States. The government says the recognition is part of a coordinated international effort towards a two-state solution.
Working together, we can build a future where instead of children in Gaza dying in pain, living in fear, or being taught to hate, they can go to school and build a life in larger freedom.
They'll have to change the government. They'll have to change the government in Palestine for that to happen, won't they? It's not giving them a state, it's changing the government. It's so upside.
Establishing that somebody has engaged in hate and vilification on its own is not enough. Now it will be. Ages and has a history of engagement.
It was enough. Be careful of these politicians. They're crafty, scheming liars.
In hate speech, in vilification, in displaying hate symbols will of itself be enough to be able to cancel a visa.
Yeah, but what about the people that are on visas in the country that are protesting with these Middle Eastern flags and things? I see, this is going to be complicated.
Hate symbols offences that were put through in the previous parliament when the government was acting on hate symbols, on hate crimes and on hate speech have not resulted in the number of charges that we had hoped.
No, I'll tell you why, because they neglected it all. They turned a blind eye to it all. And that's why if there's an Australian Royal Commission, Federal Royal Commission, these people are in big trouble, because they neglected it all. They turned a blind eye to it all, which encouraged it all.
I raised this some weeks ago with Commissioner Barrett, and the Australian Federal Police came back to me with recommendations that I then forwarded some weeks ago, only a couple of weeks ago, to the Attorney General. Effectively, we will be making it easier for the Australian Federal Police to successfully bring charges against those who use and display hate symbols. We'll also be making changes to the Customs Act so that, as well as it being unlawful for them to be held in Australia, it is easier for them to be intercepted at the border if they're seen there. And finally, on listing prohibited hate organisations. I've spoken before about my disgust for a very long time at organisations like Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Nationalist Socialist Network, otherwise known as the neo-Nazis.
This is where he shifts the narrative, okay? This is where the focus here is supposed to be on Islamic jihadism. This is where they're missing it. Okay, this is where they've got to be accountable. You can't have civilians trying to work out in a Royal Commission what's actually happened and going on here, because it's obvious this guy's a serial liar and is definitely cognitive dissonance of his actions relative to what he's saying. And apparently he's representing us taxpayers as a servant. I don't think so. I wouldn't want him in my army. He's a traitor, actually, when you think about it, sadly. And that's not hate speech. That's based on the person's actions.
Organisations for a long time have been able to take hate right to the threshold without using the words violence and escape any further terrorist listing. We will be establishing a new form of listing for those who do not meet the terrorist organisations of being able to prescribe organisations. I'm asking my department, as the drafting is done, to check it against previous behaviour of Hizb ut-Tahrir and the National Socialist Network.
What about Hamas and bloody ISIS and the rest of it?
Their behaviour needs to be unacceptable. Their behaviour needs to be unlawful. Their behaviour needs to be enough that we can prescribe the organisation and prohibit their activity in Australia.
Isn't that amazing? Like, that was not convincing at all. It was completely, relatively out of context. And if you can trust these people, you're a better man than I am. Okay, so let's look at some of the other politicians and what they're saying about all this.
For more reaction now, I'm joined by the Shadow Attorney General, Andrew Wallace. Andrew, thanks for your time this afternoon. You've seen the Prime Minister.
Thanks.
He was asked repeatedly at this press conference in Canberra about why he will not hold a Royal Commission. He says he wants urgency and unity, not division and delay. What's your response?
Well, this seems to be, the line that the Prime Minister always takes when he's under pressure, that he wants unity. But the reality is, I've been on the ground in Sydney, where I am right now, and I've been talking with people who have been impacted by this terrible atrocity. And people want answers. They don't want a hodgepodge, piecemeal approach to this. I listened to the Prime Minister talk about multiple inquiries, and you know what? I agree with him. We don't want multiple inquiries. We just want one all-encompassing inquiry. It absolutely beggars belief, Trudy, why the Prime Minister of this country would not want a Royal Commission into the worst shooting since 1996, the worst terror attack in Australia, in Australia's history. People are wondering, as am I, why? Why is the Prime Minister so adverse to this? What's he trying to hide here?
Those Australians generally, but Jewish Australians in particular, an apology for all of the things that have happened on his watch. It was on his watch that hate preachers rejoiced in the original October 7 atrocity. It was on his watch that we had the horrific scenes in the Opera House forecourt. It was on his watch that we had the Harbour Bridge March with constant demands to kill the IDF and globalise the Intifada. And then, of course, we had the Bondi Massacre. It was on his watch, in a massive concession to the pro-Palestine protesters. We had the recognition of Palestine. So there's been a succession of failures which are the responsibility of the Prime Minister. And really, I think the least he owes the Australian people is an apology. Chris Minns was man enough to do it. Why isn't the Prime Minister?
Sorry truly seems to be the hardest word, including for the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong. I mean, she's come out today and she said sorry if people experienced, for how people may have experienced her visit to Israel, in which she didn't actually visit any of the sites where the terror attack happened on October 7. I mean, that's a non-apology too, isn't it?
Exactly right. Look, this government has never been fair dinkum about protecting Jewish people. Frankly, I don't think it's been fair dinkum about standing up for Australian values, and I don't think this government gets it. I think we've got a government of social justice activists. We don't have a government which is serious about keeping Australians safe. There's no one in this government who appears to be a national security warrior, and frankly, a credible government in these perilous times needs at least a few national security warriors in senior positions, but I can't see any of them at all.
The Prime Minister is still resisting calls which are growing for a National Royal Commission. He says there's already a State Royal Commission that Chris Minns, the New South Wales Premier, has committed to. He's launching a review into security agencies and intelligence agencies that will be essentially internal, not independent. Why do you say that a Royal Commission has to happen on a federal level?
Only a Royal Commission can subpoena documents, compel witnesses and get to the bottom of this whole sorry mess. Now, I can understand why the Prime Minister doesn't want to have a federal Royal Commission because he's frightened of what will come out. I think he's frightened that there will be advice that went to government, which we currently don't know about, that warned of the likelihood of terrorist events. There may well be WhatsApp messages between the Prime Minister and ministers which have been making light of the whole anti-Jewish hatred which has been rampant in our community for the last 2 years. This current inquiry that the Prime Minister has commissioned is simply a cop-out. It's basically the Prime Minister looking into the Prime Minister. I don't think we can expect any real insights to come from that. And while a New South Wales Royal Commission is certainly better than nothing, and again, all credit to Chris Minns for doing it, the Jewish hatred that we've seen is a national problem. It's not just a New South Wales problem. That's why, if the Prime Minister is finally going to be fair dinkum about making a difference, he really has to have a National Royal Commission. He says there'll be cooperation between the Feds and a State Royal Commission, but a State Royal Commission, I think, will have enormous difficulty actually getting to the bottom of this because it won't be able to compel the production of witnesses and documents from inside the federal system. Mind you, as long as the State Royal Commission is going, the Prime Minister will have an excuse to avoid answering questions because he can say, oh, it's all being looked into by a State Royal Commission. Look, this whole thing, again, it's a Prime Minister who is trying to avoid responsibility for the terrible things that have happened on his watch and which, quite frankly, government actions and inactions have contributed to.
You know, on that, we saw the Prime Minister in his press conference today talk about some of the reaction he got, the reception he got at this event last night to mark 1 week since the terrorist attack. And the way he put it was that he understood and accepted that there was some anger being directed towards him in the community. Again, it feels like he is dodging accountability here, or he's just trying to minimise his own role in this.
Yeah, it's one thing to accept people are angry. What about doing something to eliminate the causes of that anger? I mean, from the beginning, we should have had hate preachers being deported or prosecuted. We should have had these hate marches banned. We should have had funding to Islamist bodies eliminated. We should have had a much greater stress on Australian values because, quite frankly, this is a government which has not just let down Jewish people, it's let down all of us. What's been happening over the last 2 years, it's not who we are. We need to restore decency and pride and self-respect to our country, and this cavalcade of weakness from the Prime Minister is just not going to cut it.
Now, joining me is former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger and One Nation Senator Sean Bell. Thanks to both of you for joining me. I want to talk about the tensions that hit boiling point at the memorial service in Bondi last night. Here's a reminder. Michael, the Prime Minister would have been ready for this. I mean, he's avoided Bondi like the plague for the last week. But this goes beyond politics, doesn't it? This is genuine and sheer frustration.
No, absolutely. Look, Danica, he was warned for 2 years, this bloke. For 2 years he was warned by the Jewish community, and he did very little. This is a bloke that couldn't even keep his own electorate office open because he was so fearful of offending pro-Palestinian demonstrators. His own electorate office couldn't be open. Why would anyone think he could defend the Jewish community, which we now know he couldn't and can't? He won't call a royal commission, for goodness sake. Any leader, we had royal commissions into pink bats, for goodness sake. This guy is just an international pariah. He's a pariah in this country. Jewish families don't want to have a bar of him. Australians are sick of him. In a moment of great national crisis, we get a diminished leader who should resign. I mean, he should resign. I mean, his performance has been appalling. Chris Minns, on the other hand, Kelly Sloan, but particularly Minns because he's the Premier, has been outstanding, and rightfully he was cheered last night at the vigil because he's done an exceptional job.
Well, he's basically the Prime Minister of the country. I mean, credit where it's due. Chris Minns has been exceptional in a crisis right now, while the Prime Minister has, firstly, been in Canberra for most of last week, not at the scene, not in Bondi, not having the courage to even turn up. Sean, I mean, no wonder there were boos yesterday. What does this say?
I think it says that people are fed up and disgusted by what is probably the worst failure of leadership I've seen in my entire life. And if the Prime Minister doesn't like being booed, then I think he better get used to it, because from his continued failure, the boos are only going to get louder. And I've seen some people from the Labor Party sort of act shocked and dismayed at the boos. Well, I've got a message for them. They are not the victims here. You know, people being booed is the least of our concerns. What we've got is a country that is now struggling in the aftermath of the worst ever terrorist attack, and we've got a government that cannot even name the cause, which was radical Islamic terror. And not only can they not name it, they won't take the necessary action to deal with it. They can't even call a royal commission, which is the least they could do.
Exactly. I mean, we need to get to the bottom of this. If the Prime Minister can't even speak about radical Islam, then nothing's ever going to get solved. Let's talk about the changes to the gun.
Barnaby Joyce, on his way home from a Australian demonstration, come across this. As I walked towards Town Hall Station, there were the later age group, white with backpack and of course Khalif over their shoulders. They were not particularly happy to see me. Generic and predictable rude comments came my way as I walked down the street. One had a badge sewn to their backpack, Jewish, not Zionist. I think, however, it was a fair bet that they had been part of the demonstration that day, where it was chanted, "Globalise the Intifada." Now, all this stuff's supposed to be illegal. Globalise the Intifada. As Lenin is supposed to have said, useful idiots. Now, let's be clear what that means 1 week, 1 day after the mass murder and shooting of Australian Jews and others at Bondi Beach. Globalise the Intifada encourages violence against Israelis, Jews and institutions supporting Israel. While the intent of the person saying this phrase may be different, the impact on the Jewish community remains the same. So that does not send the message that the government has control of the situation at all, when this is happening a short walk from New South Wales Parliament. I'm pretty sure that removing the recreational rights of country people to go shooting is not going to stop these people, which would be seen by many as the implicit support of the theme of the mass murderers at Bondi.
And that is precisely why I intend to keep saying, globalize the Intifada. And that is precisely why I intend to keep saying, globalize the Intifada and free Palestine. I think if Sarah can say it, we can all chant it with us. So.
It's pretty well relentless. It's not going to stop. And it's all but too late. I'm out, viewers.